Hey everybody, welcome to Buckets. I'm your host, Joe Dellera, and I am joined by Jim Turvey and Bryan Fonseca. We are
You
here
give yourself the name. You got.
Well, no, I gotta let
Who else
Bryan
would
do
do
it for me. So this episode is immediately off the rails. And we were talking offline about how else we would pronounce our names.
The pre-show was amazing.
The pre-show was great. I wish it was actually the show. So I'll let Bryan introduce me at this point, so that way we can get this show on the road.
He's going by Joe Dellera now.
Yeah.
We're gonna add a goatee to the profile picture.
We're gonna roll those L's here. So we kicked Matt Moore off the episode specifically so we could do this intro. But we are obviously here, future Jays and Bryan. So naturally, this is not only going to be a Knicks podcast, but this is, I'm certain we are going to find a way to make this a co-sponsored episode by the Charlotte Hornets. So we will definitely get into that today. But the first news and the major news that kind of has happened, obviously, is we're seeing the prediction markets move up and down on Giannis, where he's going, where he's going to be. But at the end of the day, the thing that we actually know that has actually happened right now is a trade. We do have one trade, and naturally it involves the Sacramento Kings making some questionable decisions in the trade market. But we do see a trade where the Cleveland Cavaliers are trading DeAndre Hunter to the Sacramento Kings for Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. And it also looped in the Chicago Bulls, getting Dario Saric and 2 future second-round picks. To me, this is just the most Kings trade in the entire world. You see this. The teams that are calling about Keon Ellis were like the Boston Celtics, the Oklahoma City Thunder, like the best teams in drafting, evaluating talent, everything. And then you just trade him for basically nothing. Like you traded him for a guy that the Cavs couldn't get rid of. They were trying to get rid of him. So, Jim, when you see this type of trade, like who do you think won and why is it not the Kings?
I mean, they attached picks even. It really is like some of the worst asset management of all time. And you'll anywhere you go on Twitter, you'll be able to see, everyone with their take on just how bad it is. And listen, I'm a DeAndre Hunter guy in part because I'm a Virginia fan. So I always like to see my Virginia guys play well in the pros, but he has really struggled this year. And, this is where I do think like the Kings' reputation does hurt them. Cause like you could look at this and be like, okay, this is actually a distressed asset in DeAndre Hunter. Like last season, he clearly had value. He was like who the Cavs went for at the deadline. This was a good buy low, but it's the Kings. You don't give them any benefit of the doubt, right? It's like, oh no, they did it by getting Keon Ellis, selling him at his low point after not putting him in the rotation at all this year. Yeah. Schroeder's a guy who, I think because of his like big playability, and he has had moments in the playoffs, he's very inconsistent as well, but he's a piece that a lot of teams I think would be interested in. And yeah, they kind of package the two of them together and get back, maybe a distressed asset. But like even if Hunter comes back to playing at a better level, like how did him and Keegan Murray fit? Who like Keegan Murray is the youngest player, kind of like a theoretical core player on your team. It's none of it ever makes sense with Sacramento. So like I struggle to give them the benefit of the doubt on being like, oh yeah, they had advanced scouting and they saw X and Y reasons why, oh, this is a good buy low punt Hunter. It seems like a flashy name, semi-flashy name that they were like, oh, we're going to flip out these guys, Keon Ellis, we're not even using. It's like, well, that's actually not, that's it. Like you're not using him, but you should be, because he's actually a really, really useful player who should be getting more playing time. I think from the Cavs side of things, it's pretty interesting. I think we were talking on this maybe in Slack or something, but it does seem like maybe this is the forerunner to like a Darius Garland move, just because there's like 2 really good guards here, and maybe it's Darius Garland insurance. He has been banged up a lot. The toe thing just seems like it's like refuses to go away ever. But I think it's a useful pickup for them. I think Keon Ellis is really good. I actually don't love the fit again in Cleveland, in part because right now there is Darius Garland. He got sent over with Dennis Schroeder. Yeah. Like, is he going to have playing time here? I mean, I think he will be kind of a Kenny Atkinson guy. So maybe they'll carve out time for him. But like Fred Porter Jr. has been playing pretty well for them. Lonzo Ball's out of the rotation. They have so many guards. So it's kind of a weird move all around, where like I could try and talk myself into a buy low for Sacramento, but I don't give them the benefit of the doubt. I think Cleveland won the trade, but I'm not even sure if the fits are all perfect. So it could be the first domino. I kind of hope it's first domino. It'd be fun to have a busy trade deadline. But yeah, overall, I'm not really sure moves like from a betting perspective. I'm not coming out of this being like, okay, I got to bet this, I got to bet that, I got to bet, Hunter 6 players. There's not really anything betting wise that grabbed me. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit cold to the trade in general.
Yeah, I think Hunter's been so rough, and Kenny is going to somehow find a way to put Keon Ellis behind Sam Merrill in this rotation. So we'll have to see how that goes. But Brian, did you have any takeaways from this, or are you expecting this to maybe be a precursor for either a Garland move, or is this maybe a smaller move coming where you kind of can get off of the Lonzo Ball contract or move him somewhere else since he did kind of fall out of the rotation?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above for me. So what I expect is Lonzo Ball to get dumped into, I guess, Brooklyn space or Utah space, because they're really the two only teams that could take him right now. It feels like for nothing back, and Cleveland would be dumping him to try to get under the second apron so that they can aggregate salary theoretically for a different move. And I'm looking at Garland, and I'm looking at Jared Allen potentially. I know that's
Yeah.
that's Kenny's guy, but at the same time, Mobley is everybody's guy in that organization, who's the guy that I don't think they want to move off of. And I looked at even, okay, does this set up a potential Cavs being the dark horse Giannis team now? Because Giannis is getting a ton of interest. They have the contracts that can work. And then if you just look at everything else that they could do once Lonzo Ball is dumped elsewhere, and it feels like Dennis Schroeder is Darius Garland insurance. It's like, okay, I get a Darius Garland version who is obviously not as good, not an all-star level, but can replicate a good amount of this. And at the same time, you don't want a full Darius Garland clone, because if you want off Darius Garland, it's because in part you don't think Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell work anyway. So you want him to come off the bench regardless. And then you have Keon Ellis, who I think if he does play, I have questions about like the playing time and things like that. But I could see Kenny really taking a liking to him because of the type of guys he developed in Brooklyn. And Keon Ellis is a guy who can shoot. Like throughout the duration of his career, he's been a quality 3-point shooter. He doesn't take a ton, but he does make them. And obviously defensively. Now, is he going to guard fours? No. But can he guard on the perimeter respectively? Yes. And I also think both of these players, Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis, were good players on a stupid ass team. Like, I think they were on a team that just made no sense for their skill set, just made no sense, period. I don't think the Kings, like the players on the Kings, are dumb, but I think the organization is probably the worst in basketball right now. And it makes sense that they're getting away from that. And now you can kind of plug in both of them given where the Cavs are right now. So it allows a lot of possibilities. I wonder if they're going to be a Giannis team, if they're going to be a Sabonis team. Like, I think something else is coming, but first they have to dump Lonzo's contract to have added flexibility, which there's a pathway to doing that now that DeAndre Hunter's off the roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it makes a lot of sense that this is the more of a precursor move to another move. And, speaking of different things in terms of cap space, one of the other teams that had an interesting cap situation or cap development was actually the Philadelphia 76ers. And while it's unfortunate because it sounds like it might have been for, self-medication for, and I don't want to kind of get into this, like what the actual reasoning was, but Paul George suspended for 25 games due to a violation of essentially the drug protocol. And, he came out with a comment talking about, it seemed like it was about self-medicating for mental health reasons. And obviously you want everybody to be healthy. You want everybody to get the help that they need. And self-medicating isn't really the best way to do that. But what it did do is it really dropped Philly's luxury tax requirements to the point where now you aren't in a situation where you have to dump like a full Kelly Oubre contract. There's some smaller moves that they can do to get under the tax, or they can start making some more moves in free agency, or picking up some other players or making some other transactions here. Do you think, Jim, that Philly is going to be more of a buyer or a seller here coming up to the deadline? Because I think the team, with the way Embiid's been playing, looks a lot better than we had thought they were going to look, especially at this point in the season.
Yeah, and I was just listening to, because I hadn't thought of them much. Like, I think this this outcome did kind of like free up the possibility for them being a player in some of these things. And, I don't think it's where I would have Giannis going. Like, it wouldn't be one in my top 4 or 5 guesses, but
right.
I was just listening to The Athletic had a pod. They were talking about, how, we would think of Giannis and Embiid maybe being a clunky fit, but Embiid's like kind of Zydrunas Ilgauskas now. Like he's like not near the rim. He's kind of just a really silky smooth shooter who like isn't by the basket all that much. So actually probably would be a really good fit with Giannis. Like it's not as if they would be bumping into each other near the basket. Again, I don't think it is likely to play out that way, but I mean, a starting five of Maxey, Edgecombe, Paul George, Giannis, and now maybe
I
it's
think Paul
Edgecombe
George might have to go, or
or
something.
Paul George. But like the theoretical fit and the theoretical ceiling of this team, the ceiling's interesting just if they're healthy in general. It's a team that definitely has been pretty under the radar in general. I would say has been under my radar a little bit. I really haven't, been super locked in on I haven't been betting them in any ways, but they definitely have a pretty interesting ceiling. And now with some market, flexibility on the cap flexibility there, you have to at least have them on your radar and be, ready. Maybe you've got one of the prediction markets open. You're seeing, okay, Philly's taking money for next team for Giannis. Let me, get ahead of this real quick and play win the East or something.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun, but hopefully it doesn't happen as a Knicks podcast. Would really hate to see that. Brian, what do you think about Philly's situation and kind of what they may or may not be looking to add? They got a lot of really young wings, honestly. It's almost like a redundancy. You wonder if they make any moves, try to get some other players some playing time, or consolidate different types of talent. Like you got Jared McCain, who's fantastic last season and is basically getting no burn this year at all.
I like that the ball be in VJ Edgecombe's hands a little bit more, just to see, all right, is he going to hit a rookie wall, or is he actually going to get maybe back to where he was earlier in the year? From a trade standpoint, Paul George's contract is actually quite useful. I don't know if somebody else would be willing to take 51.6 and then 54 million and then a player option for 56 million. But there are things that a Philly can try to do with that. Otherwise, I mean, the Quentin Grimes situation is interesting because are you definitely going to re-sign him? He's going to be a free agent. He has 8.7 million, and obviously, that's the qualifying offer. So we know he's not going to be restricted this summer. So I do wonder if you try to use him as a trade chip as well. Like, can you get something decent for a Grimes, Jared McCain package? And Jared McCain, I do think you wouldn't be selling high, but he's the type of guy that if I were a bad team like the Kings, maybe even the Wizards, although I don't know how much sense he would make there, but one of those teams, I feel like, all right, I probably would give Jared McCain a shot. Why not? Because there's 2 more years of team control after this year. And I don't think there's a role for him in Philly right now. I think part of it is injury related, but part of it's also VJ Edgecombe is there, Maxey's there, and he kind of tops out, if everything breaks right, a 6-man on the team. And it's you can kind of find that in a different way. So I think there are some things that they can do. And I don't know if Paul George is going to be out for a while, but I don't know if I'm I'm off Philly now. You know what I mean?
No.
He'll be back also before the playoffs, well before
honestly,
the playoffs.
Might be good to keep his legs fresh.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing overall.
Yeah. I do think I would try to shore up their depth though, just because Maxey doesn't need to be covering all the ground he does and playing 40 minutes regularly at the speed at which he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of kind of moving parts right now, especially as we're heading into the trade deadline. And one of the things that I think is important to kind of consider when we're betting on some of these things, Jim and I had talked about this a little bit off air previously, but betting on these, some of my thoughts are there's certain players that are obviously just never going to get traded. Like Brunson's not getting traded. Anthony Edwards isn't getting traded. You used to be able to say Giannis isn't getting traded, but now Giannis might be getting traded. Like Steph Curry's not getting traded, right? Wemby's not getting traded. So some of those guys are obviously not going to be traded.
One of those guys should be that you mentioned, but we'll leave it alone.
Some of those spots, like when you look at it, they're playing for teams that there's been a lot of rumors around, and there's other players on the team that may or may not get moved. So one of the things that Jim and I had talked about, and I'll kind of kick it over to Jim from a projection standpoint, but we had been talking about if you're betting on overs for some of those players that are certain to have roles, or maybe even role players that you like in a particular matchup, but maybe they get moved, maybe they don't get moved. But if somebody else got moved, it might help a lot more. Overs could actually be a decent look in comparison to how unders are normally have a little bit more of an edge, Jim. So what do you think about that as we head into the trade deadline?
Yeah, I quite like that. This is the year of Joe joining the unders, but we're pressing pause for a week here because you're 100% right. Because if you play an under on, Justin Champagny or a kind of a role player who's going to be impacted way more if a different role player gets announced out that day, either because they're traded, or what you'll see a lot this week too is that guys get kind of ruled out because, we might be trading this guy. Sabonis kind of came out of nowhere to sit today. If you'd played like a Maxime Reynaud under, you're like, dude, come on, man. Like, now Sabonis is out. My under is absolutely cooked. Whereas if you had taken a Maxime Reynaud like all over, those all overs kind of like speculating on guys who either might be traded or guys whose teammates might be traded or guys whose teammates might be pulled because of they're in rumors or whatever. I think those all overs actually do offer a pretty good, edge in that if you think there's a guy who you're starting to hear some buzz about, he's listed maybe popped up as questionable, that likely is that he's in some trade rumors, and take the teammates all overs and just kind of avoid unders for guys whose minutes would be impacted. That again, the Wembys of the world, that's not really going to matter. It's those role players, those fifth, sixth, seventh men who you want to be looking at those all overs. I think that's a really good thought in terms of approaching this week. I would also say just approach with relative caution this week anyways. Yeah. It's just kind of, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. We saw 2 games decided by 50 points tonight. Guys are looking to get to the All-Star break. I mean, you can see some weird stuff this week. So if you're going to do it, maybe do some, all overs or targeting guys who, aren't going to be impacted by trades.
Yeah, and to get Brian's thoughts on it a little bit, obviously, when you're betting some of the, we do this in the Action app with some of our structure and the way that we do some of the betting for even like the 3-star, 2 stars, and 1 stars, where they're staggered in terms of how much the weight is that's put on each bet. They're not all 1-unit bets, and like they kind of go down in some sort of descending order. But Brian, if you're looking at some of these all overs, or you're kind of betting from a little bit of a speculative perspective, maybe how would you approach that from like a bankroll management perspective? Are you looking to say like, well, I want to try to capitalize on this and say like, I think I'm really right, I want to bet like a full unit on this? Or is it more of like, I'm okay with just like, playing a bunch of different angles and maybe spraying the board a little bit more, but reducing the risk on each bet?
I'm probably trying to minimize risk. I don't want to get burned, ultimately. Like one thing that I noticed today was Domantas Sabonis popped up on the injury report as questionable. It was downgraded. And he's one of those guys that could have a big trickle down effect if you look at the roster. I would stay away from the Kings roster in general this week. Like there are certain teams where the Kings, the Pelicans to some extent, where you could see a world where there's overhaul over the next few days. And that's where it gets a little risky. Now, can you buy low on someone who's like a Jeremiah Fears, who gets playing time already, but could have more usage if certain guys move from the roster? Maybe, because he's a rookie and he's not going to get moved. So maybe the idea is, hey, you just stick with certain guys, like one of whom we're going to talk about, Brandon Miller, who he's not going anywhere. And he's, I would say, not a star yet, but some of these guys who you don't think are going to like move at all, maybe they're worth backing, especially if there's collateral around them. Like there's a world where New Orleans just gets off of the Trey Murphy seems dramatic, but like someone like him or Zion or whatever, and then it's like, oh, okay, there's more runway here for Derek Queen or a Jeremiah Fears, for example. Or in the case of Charlotte, if they were to move Miles Bridges, then it's like, oh, there's even more opportunity for someone like a Con Knipple or whatever. But I think I echo what Jim said, and just be very cautious this week and stay away from certain teams like the Bulls, like the Kings, who could potentially be just moving around a lot of parts.
Yeah. And I think on the flip side of that, If you maybe miss the beginning part of this, where you miss the projecting maybe like a trade or thinking that a trade's going to go through, and you start to look at the markets after somebody's traded, a lot of times you can see dramatic overreactions in the market, where at that point you do want to bet an under because you're like, this guy sucks. Like, he's not getting that line. Like, you kidding? And we see that a lot with like Dyson Daniels. So sometimes it just happens. It is what it is. But now we're going to talk about the team that we have been, I think, talking about all season. We were talking about them in the off season. We were talking about them from the thought process that they're going to get a lot better. And Brian obviously mentioned Miles Bridges as a potential trade candidate. But Brian, I think I got to pass the mic to you to talk about your maybe new favorite NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets.
My number one league pass team all season long. I didn't think they would have a month where they'd be like a top 5 defense. I think that's the part to me that's more so stunning. Like, what I said was over and over, this is a real team who can, if they're healthy, like they have the capability of just being one of these teams, or hey, they can beat anybody. They showed that with the OKC game, and they have this dark magic element to them where it's like, hey, on no rest, on a back-to-back, on a rest disadvantage, they're elite on all those metrics across the board. Like, it doesn't matter. As as I mentioned this on an episode of Buckets last week, Chris, who's in our Discord, who's a Hornets fan, says you can't spell Hornets without no rest, which I believe we should put on a T-shirt. Which is it's ridiculous, like how that works out, right? But this team is insane right now, and the key thing is health. Like, I do wonder, and I guess this would be my question about them moving forward, because they just had a great month. They're 22-28, just big picture. They're rising up in the play-in rankings, and they're almost at 10. Like, they're getting closer and closer every time you look. What I wonder is, first of all, knock on wood, because we want to see this team healthy and fun, and because they've been one of the better stories in the NBA. And I felt like when they got Charles Lee, I was like, okay, they have a coach that I think can steer this ship, and so far he's proven to do that. I think if this even gets more dramatic, we could be talking about him as a fringe coach of the year contender. I think what we need to look at is, okay, if somebody goes down, and by somebody, it's mainly one of their big 3, quote unquote, in Concanipple, Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, the latter 2, especially because they've missed time already this year. And part of their 4 and 14 start was because both of those guys have missed some time and were struggling with injuries, Brandon Miller especially. If one of them does miss, have they built the infrastructure where it's like, okay, they're actually better now, they have more principles now, it's going to make more sense? Or does the whole thing just come apart once again because like one of their main guys are healthy? This, I think, could also apply to Moussa Diabate, because they only have 2 centers right now with him and Ryan Kalkbrenner. PJ Hall a little bit on the 2-way contract could fill in, and Mason Plumlee's been out with a groin injury that's going to put him out for a long time. I don't know what to project from them from a trade deadline standpoint either. I kind of think they could move Colin Sexton for something, who's on an expiring contract north of like 18-19 million. But I don't think they're going to be sellers or buyers. I think they'll probably do 1 or 2 opportunistic things, but I don't know what to project from that perspective. But I do wonder if they've built enough where it's like, okay, if one guy goes down, they can be fine, and they could actually sustain this run that they're on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think that this Hornets team has just been really, really solid. And we look at some of their advanced metrics right now. If you look at them at dunks and threes, for example, you're looking at them, they're plus 0.6, which is tied for 13th in terms of adjusted net rating over the course of the entire season. And that factors in a variety of different things, but they're tied with the Clippers and they're tied with the Raptors too. So, I mean, they're right there in terms of what the standings are. And then even looking at them from cleaning the glass, I always like to look at them because you can kind of see some of the adjusted stats here for win differential. They are the number 1 team. And by that, I mean, like, they're the worst team. So in terms of what's the difference between the number of games the team has won and what would be expected, they've lost 5.5 games more than expected based on what their point differential is. They're 14th in just raw point differential, excluding garbage time, plus 1.7. So that's like a stunning number, to be honest with you. So you have that, and the other teams that are around there, it's actually like them, Boston, New Orleans, Minnesota, and Houston. So a lot of times you see better teams in that grouping where maybe they lose a close game here and there, and the it just doesn't break necessarily their way. But their expected wins right now per 82 are 45.2. That's what they're expecting over the course of the season. And they're saying that they should be at like 27 and a half wins or so. So that's basically flip-flopping their results to 28 and 22 based on how they've performed. And I think a lot of it, they've been in and out. Over the last 2 weeks, they're the number one team in the NBA, plus 15.5 point differential, number one in offense, number two in defense, plus 11.9 in spread differential. So, Jim, those are some wild numbers there. Do we have like an actionable angle for the Hornets?
Yeah, I definitely think we do, and I'll kind of build up to it because I mean you guys had a bunch of good numbers as well, but it's like you referenced 2 weeks. It's been kind of like 2 months, and especially like January as a whole, they just set I believe because they snuck in one game maybe after I saw a sweep, but I believe they had like the best net rating ever for a team, which is like mind-blowing. Yeah. Like this is the Charlotte Hornets in this year. Like how is this happening? Had some big blowouts, but blowouts are usually a pretty good indicator. I mean, we saw the beginning of the season, it was the Celtics who were kind of underperforming, and it was like, oh, they're blowing teams out. Their net rating's so good. They've taken off. They've been awesome since then. It usually is a leading indicator. This starting five is 12-1 together. This starting five in 167 minutes of like non-garbage time is plus 27.1. That's
crazy. It's crazy.
Like,
and they're not playing bums, Jim.
No,
like, they just beat the Spurs.
They beat the Spurs. And the thing that I think is really amazing, because I think it kind of gets lost. This team can shoot the leather off the ball. They got three guys who can just absolutely shoot. I was watching their game against the Spurs. The announcers were talking about, I felt like every guy who stepped at the line, they were like, oh, yeah, LaMelo's made 28 straight free throws. Oh, Brandon Miller's made 24. Oh, Con Knippel has 3 different stretches of 20-plus free throws. It's like kind of insane. They're third in threes made per game. They're fifth in percentage. They're fourth in free throw percentage. Like that's kind of like when the scouts look at stuff, usually it's like, are you like the 3-point shooting can be so variant. You kind of tether with the free throw shooting, and they've got great free throw shooters. Diabate's defense is amazing. They got Grant Williams back, who's been really big, and the team's just healthy right now. That's the biggest thing, because they do have a couple of guys who have had historic, like LaMelo's often, tweaked something or whatever, but they've actually been on a really good program of keeping his minutes low. These guys aren't getting wear and tear because they're winning by so much. So to your bigger question, Joe, I definitely think it's actionable. I logged to make the playoffs the other day in the app. It hasn't moved a ton since then. You can get plus 1,800 still at FanDuel. Right now they are, and these were midday, and now each team played. So I think now it's that they are 4.5, 5 back of Miami, 4.5 back of Orlando, I believe. Like 5 in the loss column. That's not that much. These teams have really not impressed all that much this season in Orlando and Miami. Atlanta's been like actively bad. We gave out them to miss the playoffs in a recent pod. And, this is kind of the flip side of that coin. Charlotte's coming for that playoff spot. If you look at them to make the playoffs at plus 205 at DraftKings, I really like both of those bets. That's kind of the escalators, playoffs plus 205, division plus 1,800. Seems like, kind of a long shot. They're 22 and 28, but the way they are playing, and the market like loves them. I was talking to Matt about it, and he kind of worked the market numbers back, where you like look at, spread, your day-to-day spread, you make like a market number. They're easily the best team in the division right now by the market, which is funny because they've even been good against the spread. They're 29 and 21 against the spread this season. So they've been overperforming expectations, and the expectations are kind of high. The market believes in them. We see Franz got, that weird setback. He had played in Germany, hasn't played since. Miami's had a couple guys out. Tyler Hero, we haven't heard anything about him. Powell's out with like a personal thing today, I think. But none of these teams in the Southeast are blowing me away. And Charlotte, I think, is very legit. It's easy the NBA season has so many ups and downs. It's so easy to get caught up with every flavor of the month. But I have come around to this team a lot. I was pretty skeptical of them. This isn't, for me, this is not confirmation bias. This is not a victory lap. Brian, this is your victory lap. For me, this is like eating crow because I was pretty out on this season. I've got an alt under like 18.5. I thought they were going to get hurt. I thought they were going to wrap things up. Charles Lee, man. Like I love your shout for coach of the year there.
80-1.
80-1 at draft.
80? Maybe that's the future of the week.
That's the highest up. We just
I'll change the graphic, David.
There's the escalator.
That's the highest level on the escalator right there. Because he's doing an incredible job. If they get to 45 wins, he's got to be in the conversation. And 45 is probably about the ceiling. But like, I also don't think it's impossible. So I'm pretty interested. This seems great, man. I was wrong, Brian. You were ahead of it, and I'm all aboard, man. I'm wearing the hoodie, and I'm all aboard the Hornets bandwagon.
Yeah, I gotta ask.
Crazy. It's crazy
gotta ask
because they're also just real quick, Joe. They're also like as mentioned earlier, 9-2, no rest against the spread, second best in the NBA. 9-2, out of rest disadvantage, third best in the NBA. 6 straight wins. The other key thing to me is also they're 18-11 just straight up when Khan, Brandon Miller, and LaMelo Ball start together. I think that's like the key when those guys play. They're 18-11 and beating like OKC, beating the Spurs, beating Philly by 40, winning games on the road. Like this is all like enough of a sample size. And right now they're just 1.5 games out of the play-in. And I bet them to make the play-in before the season, which is a number that until recently was still 800. Now, I mean, they're expected to make the play-in by the market that Jim was talking about.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I got to ask, I have a preseason ticket on Brandon Miller to score 20 plus points per game and them to win 40. So I need them to go 18-14 the rest of the way before we get to the feature of the week. What do you am I bringing this one home? Like, can we, is this going to happen?
Bring it to the window today. Cash it already.
That's definitely a fun one.
I don't want to jinx them, so hopefully we'll say hopefully. I just now they're getting a lot of love, and it's like, oh shit, I don't, you know what I mean? This is when you get nervous.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brian, I'm gonna pass it to you for the future of the week as the non-J of the future Jays here.
We have escalators to go with that. Charlotte Hornets to make the playoffs at plus 205. Because the play-in number is probably not good enough anymore. Hornets to win the Southeast Division at plus 1,800. And if you want to go all the way and ride the escalator to the very top, Charles Lee, Coach of the Year, plus 8,000. Just in case the Hornets get a top 5 or 6 seed and get to 45 plus wins, he'll be in consideration.
Yeah, that
David there. Big ups.
Yeah, that you got to give this guy a raise. All right, well, let's get into our bets of our best bets for the Tuesday slate. I needed to hit a reset button on myself there a little bit. But look, so we'll pass it to Jim. Jim, what are we looking at for your 3-star play of the night? It's a pretty thin slate, but I'm sure that we were able to find a decent amount of value here.
It is, and I talked kind of through, overs, all overs, not unders. Now I'm giving out an under on a team that is, potentially trading people. So what I would say about this is my favorite bet of the night, but I would not bet it during the day. I would wait until we get like an hour out, so you don't have any goofiness with, I don't think the Pacers are gonna send Siakam packing, but Benedict Mathurin isn't the guy that's impossible, and he's pretty central to this cap. He came back about 3 games ago. And Nesmith the usage has really plummeted in those games since he came back. It makes sense. Mathurin's a really high usage guy. And so in those games, Nesmith's usage is below 15%. For the season, he's over 20%. So it's really very notable gap, but it's kind of hiding right now because Nesmith scored 18 points, 14 points, and 23 points in those 3 games. He did that because he shot 9 of 15 from 3. Now he draws a really tough Houston Rockets defense. The spread's kind of tight. I think the market kind of trusts a healthy Pacers team to not roll over to a Rockets team that's been struggling a little bit. But I don't think this has to be a blowout. I don't think his minutes have to be low for Nesmith to go under here. He only took average 10 field goal attempts per game in that stretch. Again, really tough defensive matchup. The game as a whole is taking the last team to the under. This is what his points prop was last game. I'm really surprised they're just rolling it back. I think it is hiding in plain sight a little bit because of the good shooting those last few games. You regress his shooting to kind of the average, what you would expect. He's down around, in this area, and then it's a tough matchup. So again, I wouldn't play it just right now. Hopefully you heard that part. If you're watching live and didn't immediately log the bet, I would wait and just make sure that we don't get any trades, especially a Matherin, because he's so central to the cap here.
All right. So I'm going to talk about this play in a little bit, but I'll pass it to Brian for our 3-star play here.
Brandon Miller over 22.5 points.
Let's go.
Over in 4 straight, over at 8 of 10. I logged that at 21.5, which is where it was about an hour ago. So that one's already moving. So that one I just wanted to grab right away. But he's been shredding this number. He actually looks like the future all-star that some of us think he can be as of late, who in other drafts probably could have been the number 1 pick, but Victor Wembanyama was in this draft class. So Pelicans allowed a third most threes per 100 possessions at 40.6. Brandon Miller's been 41% from 3 for about a 10-game stretch at this point. He's also been really good from 2. He's near 60% over his last 12, about 57 and change. The free throws are a part of this too. So he's getting to the free throw line a good amount, 4.6 per game in his last 11. That's a healthy amount. He's also hitting 94% on free throws during that stretch. As Jim was talking about how the Hornets are really good as a free throw shooting team. Brandon Miller is a big part of the reason for that. And his free throw rate this season is up to 24 from 16, where it hovered his first 2 seasons. So he's getting to the line a good deal more. The Pelicans, they have some talented individual defenders, but as a collective, they haven't figured it out and probably won't. And they're a team that's going to have a weird week, potentially, maybe some shakeups. So this feels like a spot where, again, don't want to get too carried away on this team that I enjoyed going into the season. But I do think this should be a spot where they take care of business, and Brandon Miller should be a leading reason for that. He's also getting a reasonable amount of volume as of late. And he was even jacking up shots when his shoulder was fucked up early in the year. So I like this from all those angles, and I think Brandon Miller should get it done.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of ditto most of this and add on the fact that the Pelicans just bleed from beyond the arc. And Brandon Miller not only can jack up a ton of threes, but he's also able to get to the rim when he wants to as well. They're not really the strongest defensive interior either. So between his ability to score as a spot-up shooter, create for himself, and get to the free throw line, I think it's a really good matchup for Brandon Miller. I'm going to steal the 2-star play right now since Jim kind of already started talking about it, but I'm going to grab Aaron Nesmith under 18.5 points plus rebounds. I like the combo prop here. A lot of it has to do in part with the Matherin of it all is definitely important. But for me, I think that the matchup against the Rockets is particularly difficult for Nesmith. It's a team, even though they're going to be without Kevin Durant, they're going to be without Steven Adams, they're still like a pretty long, rangy team. They're still a solid rebounding team. And the other thing is without Steven Adams, they've actually been allowing a bit fewer threes lately. They're not as drop heavy in terms of their defense. You're generally, even if you run Şengün out there, you're not always running Şengün for the majority of the game. I also think that with some of the injuries that they have, obviously, to Kevin Durant, you're going to see a lot more Tari Eason. And Tari Eason's pretty solid defensively. You could probably maybe put him on Aaron Nesmith a little bit as well. Earlier in the season, he had 17 PR against this team, 14 points, 3 rebounds. But I do think that given some of the defensive swings in terms of what the Rockets are allowing over their last 10 games, there is a little bit of a reason to kind of go against what Nesmith brings to the table. He's not necessarily somebody that's beating you off the dribble even if he has to. It's a tough spot for him. So I'm grabbing that under 18.5 PR for Nesmith. Brian, what are we looking at for you for your 2-star play? Well, actually, you and Jim.
I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this on purpose. Buckets audience. It is a 4-game slate. And at the time we were getting our props in, there wasn't much to choose from. There was actually a couple games that barely had anything. So this is like a 1.2.5 star. Also seeing some movement. So there's a chance that this drops to 19.5. So I'm actually waiting on this one, but Moussa Diabate over 20.5 PR. If you're interested, the double right now is plus 180 at one particular.
Boy, oh my God.
I think that's something that is interesting here. So He hasn't been necessarily a double-double machine in the way that you think he is, even though he averages and starts 9.5 points and about 10 rebounds. And part of that is because he'll have these games where he'll have 18 and 7, or he'll have 5 and 14. Like, he might have a big scoring game, big rebounding game. This actually could be a spot where he does both of them against the Pelicans again, as we mentioned earlier. He's over this number 20.5. We'll see if he gets 19.5, but 20.5 in 3 of 5 against a team that's allowed 24th most points in the paint in New Orleans, who you're not really worried about from a defensive interior standpoint. They should be able to attack the rim. He can get to the line as well and knocks them down. 32 plus minutes in 4 of 5 and over this number in 9 of 18 starts this season.
Yeah, and I think this is a great angle. And before Jim starts talking about his angle, I just got to give a shout here. So, a lot of you guys may be listening to this recorded. It really does pay to tune into this live. The Charles Lee Coach of the Year is already down to 30-1 on DraftKings. So it went from 80-1 to 30-1 over the course of about like less than 10 minutes. So really does pay to like. You got to hop on.
And anyone who got in the chat wants to send me a touch. I couldn't get it here in New York before. So, if you wanted to give a little tip, if that hits, I want to turn it down.
Yeah, send Jim a slip in the mail.
Same.
Joe, seriously, like, Joe, can you get me a little bit of Charles Lee? He's like, it's 30-1 now. So good work to the chat there. And yeah, definitely tune in live.
Yeah, so definitely nice to have that on the live show. But Jim, what are you looking at for your 2-star? I know it's gonna maybe sound kind of similar.
We're doing the same thing. Yeah, I'm Diabate, but I'm going with the points specific. I like the PR as well, but I targeted the 9.5 points here. Since entering the starting lineup, he's averaging 12.0 points per game, 18 game stretch. He's cleared this in 12 of those 18, including the last 6. We have a game here that over is taking a little bit of money as well. Brian touched on the terrible Pelicans defense. They allow the 3rd most points per game. They allow the 3rd highest opponent field goal percentage on 2s, and they allow the 4th most dunks. That's what Diabate does. I've been hitting this prop pretty much every game. It's been at 7.5, so they have moved it to 9.5. But I still think that, in this matchup and with the success he has had, I do like the over 9.5 points here as well.
No, love it. And Jim, we'll stick with you for your 1-star.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to just triple check that this play is not out yet. As of recording, this had not come out. So I'm looking at Ty Jerome points. So in his first game, the prop was all the way down. It's not out, unfortunately, unless you're saying so. It was at 8.5. I think they're going to jump it pretty notably. He went for 20 points in his first game back, and that was not even shooting well from 3. He went 2 of 7 from 3. He scored 20 points in less than 20 minutes. Again, another Virginia player, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think Ty Jerome's one of those like streaky, confident dudes who, when he is rolling, you ride with him, and when he's cold, you don't play him, and you certainly don't bet him. He had 35% usage his first game back. And it's easy to be like, oh, like that's, we're not going to roll back 35% usage. Memphis is missing a lot of guys. Ja's not playing. Jaren is questionable. No Santi Aldama. Projecting this team out, you can get to like 28% usage for Ty Jerome pretty easily, and that would, pretty handily clear this. He had 12 field goal attempts in 19 minutes. His assists were, he got a little bit lucky. He had 6 assists on 7 potentials, because I was thinking about trying to play this as a PA. I think you just want the points. He got the start his first game back, so I wouldn't be surprised if the minutes go up a little bit. And Minnesota's got a couple of guys questionable for the report. They got Ant and Julius Randle both questionable. They may look to sit guys. Maybe we can win this game without one, if not both of those guys. Maybe it keeps this game closer. They also don't have the best defensive backcourt. Like if Conley is getting minutes, Ty Jerome's going to have a real good time going at Conley there. So this is one of those that's a little bit, it's the 1-star because we don't have the exact. There's a world in which they open this at 14.5 points. That I'm going to, then it becomes like a half star, because I would project him around 15 or 16 points. So I still think he could clear this. But again, it was 8.5 the first game there. So I don't think they're going to adjust a crazy amount. I'm thinking we'll see 11.5, 12.5 type range. We'll see what they end up opening up. But I'm thinking I'll be like in the over again. But we'll have to see exactly what it opens up at.
Yeah, I love this bet. Jim and I were kind of laughing and joking about it. All three of us were actually pretty aligned in terms of what we liked for today. So my 1-star bet is Joel Embiid over 27.5 points. I think of it as a little bit of a narrative angle. Embiid, I was actually really surprised he didn't make the All-Star team this year, not even as a reserve. He's been fantastic, honestly. And it's kind of crazy considering how when you watch him play, you can tell like he's still not right. Like he doesn't look the exact same way. He's playing like 27 minutes a game and basically averaging as many points as he did during his MVP season. So I think he's been fantastic this season. So if there is any type of chip on his shoulder, I think it might come out on the Monday slate. And it's a matchup that he's really played well against. He's played really well against Ivica Zubac, and over his career, he's averaging basically 35 points a game. Obviously, some of those numbers are old, and he hasn't actually played him since 2023. So it's been a couple of years, and Zoo has. I feel like Zoo has developed from a defensive perspective over the past couple of seasons. But the overarching point kind of remains there for me. Number one, it's going to be a back-to-back for the Clippers. So we'll see if Zoo even goes in the spot. If he doesn't play for whatever reason, then this Clippers defense is going to have absolutely zero answer for him. But even if he does play, Zoo is a guy that, as good defensively as he is, he's more of a traditional big. He's a little bit slower, and they're probably going to try to play Embiid straight up in that type of matchup. Given Embiid's ability to score from even beyond the arc, on the perimeter, in the mid-range, with a little bit more touch, I think the matchup is still really good for him. So I'm going to grab the over 27.5. Again, I just think it's a little bit light for Embiid, who has been absolutely on fire lately. And he's hit this prop in seven straight games, with the low point at 29 points against the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think it's a really, really good spot for Joel Embiid against the Clippers, who are going to be on a back-to-back. So Brian, why don't you close us out here with your 1-star play?
Hornets. No, I'm kidding. This is a disgusting, nasty, dirty. This is only a 4-game slate type of prop that you would put in here. This is like a 0.5 star for me, but Clint Capella over 5.5 points against the Indiana Pacers, who have allowed the 3rd most points in the paint this season. Last time he did play 13 minutes against the Pacers. This is the 2nd time that these two teams are facing each other this year. He had 6. Steven Adams started that game. No Alperen Sengun. No Kevin Durant tomorrow, which we'll see how that affects the game plan overall. Again, this is one where it's like it's more of a lean. I will acknowledge that. It's probably more of a lean where like I think he can get 3 dunks / layups in this game against this very soft interior in Indiana. We'll see how the game plan is executed without Kevin Durant. And ultimately, like, teams are shooting a ton of 2s against the Pacers. Like, they're just repeatedly getting to the basket, getting to the rim. The Pacers allowed the 2nd most 2s in the NBA, and teams are shooting 56.6% from 2 against them, 5th worst in the NBA. So this could be a decent spot for Clint Capella, who did go over this last time out and had 10 points against the Hawks, who've been probably similarly bad lately in some respects. He had 10 points against them a couple games ago. So like the spot for Clint Capella.
Yeah, I think it's a solid spot here, especially against this Pacers team who, I feel like they're just tanking at this point. You may as well try to get that number 1 pick, pair them up with Halliburton, and go from there. So, guys, to recap, we've got a number of plays here. Brian and I are both on Brandon Miller over 22.5 points. Brian's also on Diabate over 20.5 PR, and Clint Capella over 5.5 points. Jim is on Aaron Nesmith under 13.5 points. Diabate over 9.5 points. Ty Jerome over 11.5 points. He's projecting. And I'm on Brandon Miller over 22.5 points. Aaron Nesmith under 18.5 PR. And Joel Embiid over 27.5 points. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday night. And let's get buckets.
There's a 4.5 for Clint Capella out right now.